Imagine being homeless, with a small child in your arms, no safe place to sleep, no money, and no hope. Now imagine that, in just a few years, you'll become one of the world's greatest investors, found your own successful company, and be the inspiration behind one of the most moving films of all time. Chris Gardner did just that. How did he do it? How did someone who lived on the streets and was rejected by countless doors manage to rewrite his story and achieve the impossible? The story of overcoming and success by Chris Gardner inspired you. Short and true with your friends. Don't forget to leave us comments. What entrepreneurial story would you like to hear next? We want to know which transformational journey you think is worth telling. Together, we can spread even more motivation and inspiration. Let's explore the incredible journey of Chris Gardner, the man who defied all odds and proved that no matter where you start, your destiny is in your hands. What he went through, what he learned, and most importantly, how you too can use the same principles to transform your life. Prepare to discover the secret to overcoming your greatest challenges and achieving success in unexpected and extraordinary ways. It was a cold morning in Milwaukee, the city where Chris Gardner grew up, a place where the biting winds of the American winter were not only relentless, but also the very essence of his soul. Chris was born into a family marked by poverty and emotional hardship. His mother, though determined, faced a constant struggle against life's obstacles, trying to keep the family together amidst scarce resources. Chris spent his childhood in a turbulent environment, with the constant absence of a father and a scenario of abuse that profoundly shaped his worldview. His mother, in turn, tried to raise him and his siblings with great love, but the difficulties were great. He grew up with a sense of not belonging, unsure of what to expect from the future. When Chris was younger, he imagined a life different from his mother's. He wanted to be successful, someone who overcame poverty and adversity. However, in his heart there was a feeling of insecurity, a void that seemed no amount of accomplishment could fill. He longed for a better future, but reality seemed far away. Over the years, life wasn't easy for him. With each new challenge, it seemed like more doors were closing. His adolescence was marked by poor choices and a series of dead-end jobs. He tried to enlist in the army, but had health problems and wasn't accepted. Chris was beginning to realize that his life wasn't going where he'd hoped. It was then that he made a decision. He needed to change. He wanted to leave behind everything that held him back and find a way to build a future that was truly his. He wanted to create a better life for himself and others. He knew he would have to fight harder than anyone else, but he was willing to pay the price. Chris Gardner, with a son by his side and a life of uncertainty, knew this opportunity was unique. He applied for an internship at the brokerage firm Dean Witter, a place where, at that moment, he had absolutely nothing to lose. The internship, as mentioned, offered no pay, which meant Chris would have to support himself elsewhere. Without the security of a salary, with an unpaid internship, Chris couldn't count on financial stability. What he did have was an incredible will to succeed. Even with everyday challenges like lack of food and a safe place to sleep, he didn't let himself be discouraged. He used the pain of his struggles as fuel. Each sleepless night at home, he tirelessly studied the stock market. He was determined to learn everything he could to ensure his one opportunity wouldn't be wasted. The reality was harsh. In a situation where he had no money for food or even transportation, Chris had to be creative. He used whatever he could to survive. He ate whatever he could find and often had to resort to the subway or even public restrooms to rest while waiting for the next day. Even so, he never gave up on his internship. He continued going to the brokerage every day, looking tired but focused on his goal. There were days when he thought about giving up, because life seemed to be crumbling around him. But something inside Chris refused to accept defeat. He didn't want his son to grow up in a world without hope. He wanted to show him that, despite the adversities, life could be different. The brokerage environment was competitive. Chris wasn't the only intern. He was surrounded by people who, unlike him, had it all: a good education, money, and a network of powerful contacts. He often felt small compared to those who were more prepared, more refined, more confident. However, Instead of feeling demotivated, he used this as a driving force. Chris knew he had to do something that would stand out among so many qualified interns. He needed to be better. He wanted to be more than just a homeless man. He wanted to be someone capable of standing out, someone who could prove that lack of resources didn't impede success. And he did just that. During that internship, Chris not only worked diligently, but also began to build valuable relationships. He demonstrated an unwavering commitment to his work, and his dedication did not go unnoticed. Even though he appeared to be struggling to make ends meet, his intellect and work ethic spoke volumes. He seized every opportunity to learn, questioned more, and asked questions that other interns didn't dare to ask. He dedicated himself so much to his work that it became impossible for his colleagues and superiors to ignore his abilities. After months of constant struggle, Chris Gardner finally saw light at the end of the tunnel. He had just been hired as a broker at Dean Witter, one of San Francisco's most respected brokerage firms. Having previously endured days and nights in homeless shelters, he was now about to take the first step on a journey that would transform his life forever. That moment was more than just a victory. It was a symbol of the resilience and unwavering faith Chris had maintained throughout his journey. He looked back on everything he had been through and knew it was the culmination of every effort, every sleepless night studying the financial markets, every difficult choice he had made, every moment of insecurity and despair he had faced alongside his son. His first victory wasn't just about getting hired. It was about surpassing every expectation that he, as a homeless man, would ever have a chance in life. Chris knew his work was just beginning. He wasn't at Dean Witter to rest or settle. He was there to conquer the world. He was committed to himself and to his son to be more than the man who once slept on the streets. He wanted to show his son that any challenge, no matter how impossible it seemed, could be overcome. In his early days as a broker, Chris faced what many face when starting a new job: a steep learning curve. He had to quickly learn the dynamics of the financial market, how to interpret charts, how to deal with clients, and most challenging, how to gain the trust of those around him. However, what set him apart from the rest was his absolute commitment. While many interns and new brokers were settling into their routines, Chris was putting in the extra hours. He studied harder, worked harder, and was willing to learn from every mistake, every criticism, every challenging situation. He knew he couldn't afford to fail. Chris Gardner's life on the streets had taught him something he carried with him every day: resilience. He wasn't the most prepared, the richest, or the most influential, but he had something many didn't: an indomitable will to succeed. While others were relaxing after work, he was in the office, calling clients, studying past cases, and taking notes on everything that could help him improve and excel. Now, Chris Gardner was no longer just a stockbroker. He had become a respected figure in the financial markets. But like any great journey, the path to true success was far from straightforward. He had achieved his first victory, but lasting success never comes without further challenges. After being hired as a broker at Dean Witter, Chris knew he would need to be more than just competent. He would need to be exceptional. The financial market was unforgiving, and every day, he faced the pressure to stand out among so many well-established professionals. But Chris's dedication was relentless. He wasn't just competing for a position. He was competing for something much bigger: a chance to rewrite his story, and more importantly, create a legacy for his son. He worked harder than anyone around him, obsessively studying market trends and spending countless hours honing his skills, all while dedicating himself to caring for his son. For him, the price of success wasn't an option. It was a necessity. His son was the reason he couldn't stop. What motivated him most to give his best each day? It wasn't just the pursuit of stability, but the deep desire to build a better future for his son, one who would one day look at him and know that his father never gave up, no matter how difficult the path. Chris Gardner went beyond the simple tasks of a traditional broker. He began building a solid network of contacts, built a reputation for honesty and dedication, and became an expert in the art of understanding his clients' needs. He wasn't there to simply sell stocks or make commissions. He wanted to understand people and help transform their lives through financial investment. He knew that by building a relationship based on trust, he could stand out from all the other brokers who were just looking for a quick sale. Over time, his dedication and excellent customer service began to pay off. He successfully negotiated deals, managed important clients, and most importantly, began to see his own company take shape not immediately, but gradually and steadily. After many years of hard work, constant learning, and overcoming obstacles, Chris Gardner's true moment of truth arrived in a way he couldn't have anticipated. He had already achieved success, but now, he faced a challenge that required not only his knowledge, but also his courage and vision. Chris had already built a solid career in the financial markets, founded Gardner Rich & Co., and earned respect as an investor. But the true test of his ability and resilience would come when he began to think beyond individual success and focus on the legacy he would leave. After all, achieving success isn't enough. What truly matters is the lasting impact you can create on the world. And it was at this pivotal moment that Chris realized his mission was no longer just to make money or be recognized as a top stockbroker. His moment of truth was connected to something much bigger: how he could use his story and his success to impact lives. He wanted to ensure that his journey of overcoming adversity would inspire others, that his story would serve as a guide for those, like him, who were facing the deepest adversities and feeling like there was no hope left. Chris then decided to expand his vision. He didn't want to be remembered simply as a man who achieved financial wealth. He wanted to be remembered as someone who opened doors for others, who brought hope to those who felt trapped by their circumstances. He knew his true legacy lay in how he helped others achieve their own dreams. Chris Gardner began to reflect on everything he had experienced: the sleepless nights on the streets, the unconditional love for his son that had motivated him to never give up, and his own journey of transformation. He knew that, despite his story of overcoming adversity, the true victory wasn't in the money, but in how he could use his story to inspire others to keep going. It was in this moment of introspection that he had a profound realization. The greatest gift he could give the world was not his investment firm, but the wisdom he had gained on his journey. He remembered how lost he felt, not knowing where to begin, and wondered how many people around him might be experiencing the same dilemma. What if he could be a light for them with that? He made the decision to share his story with the world, not to showcase his achievement, but to help others find their own strength. He wanted to be more than a successful businessman. He wanted to be a mentor, a guide, a source of inspiration for those who were still struggling. But this challenge wasn't easy. As he began sharing his story, he faced a fear of exposing himself, a fear of being vulnerable and letting others see the pain and struggles he'd experienced. For a long time, he had hidden these experiences, believing them to be weaknesses. But now, he understood that these experiences were actually his greatest strengths. Chris Gardner, like many of us, felt a fear of vulnerability. For so many years, he had become accustomed to using the hardships of his journey as armor, a way to protect himself from the world. But he began to realize that true power lay in being transparent, in sharing his scars, his failures, and his victories honestly. The internal challenge was much more than a physical or financial obstacle. It was an internal battle of acceptance. He needed to accept that, although he had overcome adversity, he still bore the scars of those experiences. And these scars were not a sign of weakness, but rather a testament to his strength. He began to understand that by sharing his story with the world, he could help heal not only himself but also others who were struggling in silence. He began to work through his vulnerability and embrace it as part of the process of personal growth. After many years of struggle, overcoming, and achievements, Chris Gardner reached a point of deep reflection. He had achieved financial success, founded his own firm, Gardner Rich & Co., and gained recognition as a major name in the financial market. However, something within him still felt unfulfilled. What he truly desired was something beyond status and riches. He wanted to inspire others, especially those facing the same challenges he had faced in his youth. In a conversation with himself, he realized that the greatest impact he could have on the world wasn't just his material achievements, but helping others see that they, too, could achieve the impossible even when the odds were stacked against He wanted to be more than a symbol of financial success. He wanted to be an example of resilience, hope, and resilience for people who, like him, were on the streets of life, unsure of how to take the next step. Chris made a life-changing decision. He would begin sharing his story with the world, not just as an autobiography of a man who survived poverty, but as a message that anyone, regardless of their circumstances, could change their life with courage, determination, and faith. After a journey marked by extreme hardship and impressive victories, Chris Gardner established himself not only as a successful entrepreneur, but as one of the greatest examples of resilience of our time. His story became a beacon of hope for those facing adversity, and his impact reached beyond the business world. But, like any great legacy, Chris Gardner's true lasting legacy goes far beyond his material achievements. He transformed his own pain into purpose, and from there, dedicated himself to helping others find the power of resilience and hope. With financial success and worldwide recognition, Chris Gardner began dedicating himself to a cause that had always been personal to him, helping vulnerable young people, especially those who, like him, had grown up in poverty and challenging environments. He founded the Chris Gardner Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to providing educational and mentoring opportunities for young people facing financial and emotional hardship. The foundation focused on job training, academic guidance, and most importantly, emotional support, demonstrating that everyone, regardless of where they start, can build a better future. Chris, once a hopeless boy, now helped shape young leaders of the future. He firmly believed that by giving these people the right tools, we can break the cycle of poverty and hopelessness. Additionally, the foundation provided business coaching and mentoring programs, where Chris served as a guide for those just beginning their entrepreneurial journeys. He knew, better than anyone, how difficult it was to start from scratch, and so he dedicated himself to helping new entrepreneurs develop their skills and overcome obstacles. At the end of his life, Chris Gardner looked back and saw a journey of great struggle, but also of great transformation. He knew that by sharing his story and helping others achieve their own success, he had fulfilled his mission. His life had become an example that it doesn't matter where you start, but how far you're willing to go. Chris Gardner's true legacy lies in how he changed the lives of millions of people. How he taught everyone that no matter how difficult the journey, there's always a path to happiness, as long as you are willing to work for it, learn from your failures, and not give up. Today, Chris Gardner's name is synonymous with resilience, determination, and purpose. His legacy will be remembered for generations as an example of someone who, from difficult beginnings, built not only a successful life, but also a life that touched the hearts of millions of people around the world. His journey teaches us that, with courage, hard work, and faith, there are no limits to what we can achieve.